This podcast does not provide medical advice. Please listen to the complete disclosure at the end of the recording.
Welcome to Everyone Dies. I'm Marianne Matzo.
And I'm Charlie Navarrete.
And this is the podcast where we talk about death and dying because it's so important. It really is important, actually, to have a conversation about it.
Yes, and it's always something to look forward to.
Absolutely. And we have food.
Food.
And death by chocolate, although it could be anything fattening, but we like death by chocolate.
Absolutely.
And alcohol in any form, or if you prefer, tea or tea with alcohol. So, Charlie, what's the death by chocolate today?
Well, actually, it was, do you know the Whitman samplers? You go, you open the box. Well, so I went to a neighborhood drugstore, and they had like a miniature box of samplers. Mm-hmm. So
it usually has like 4 in it, right?
That's it. Yes. Yeah. Well, 2 of them had the cherries. I forget the name, but basically you bite into it and there's a cherry. But Marianne, there were 2 of them in there.
Well, I would be so upset because I hate those. So,
I'm not a fan of those either. B, I kept my receipt. So I went back to the store.
Can you tell that we're both from Michigan? It's like, you don't like that? I'm going back to the store and I have my receipt.
So I explained the situation to the manager. She looked at me very patiently, nodded her head. Thought, okay, good. I have an ally. This lady understands. And I don't know why, but I actually pulled out the receipt and I showed her the receipt, and she looked at me and said, "I remember you, sir. You were just here a few minutes ago." I said, "Yes, that's me." So here's a receipt. So I said, I don't need a refund or anything, but I would like to go get another box. This is for science. And she looked at me, and I said, "No, it's not for science. I work on a podcast." And so I started to explain a little bit about Everyone Dies, and she was dying for me just to shut up. And finally, then at the end, she says, "I'm sorry, I can't help you. It's already opened." And so I explained again, and she interrupted me. She goes, "No, I'm sorry. I understand that. You can write to the manufacturer, but I'm sorry, it's already open. I can't." If they're bad, I can give you a refund. I said, "Oh, well, yes, I think I chipped a tooth. It's a hard cherry, so yes, I would like." And she said, "But you already told me that's not the problem." I went, "Oh, well, okay." So that was it. So that is my half-assed report on my death by chocolate. How about you? Anything interesting?
It sounds like death by embarrassment.
I don't think she was embarrassed. I think she was okay.
Well, I meant for you.
Oh, me. Yes. Well, possibly.
Oh, my God. Well, we're on self-inflicted quarantine out in the middle of nowhere and thoroughly enjoying it. So there's nothing going on.
Out in the middle of Oklahoma.
Oh, well, it's not exactly in the middle, southern part.
Where the wind comes whistling down the plain?
Or something,
yeah.
Yes. So it's been actually nice to read books, and I'm reading the Lincoln Rhyme series. I finished the first 2 so far, so I'm kind of enjoying the
I'm not familiar. I'm not familiar with Lincoln Rhyme.
It's the Bone Collector series.
Oh, Bone Collector. That name I've heard, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I've never read any. Yeah.
Thoroughly enjoy. Well, I'm kind of getting the series, so I'll mail them to you, and you can read them because I think you would really like them. Yeah.
And please don't mail things COD anymore. I think you can afford the postage.
Well, I put those 2 maraschino cherry Whitman things in an envelope. I would have thought they would have gotten to you in perfect shape.
No, instead they showed up in my little small Whitman sampler box. Thank you. Thanks for nothing.
Well, at least you said thank you. That's very polite of you.
Yeah.
So last week we started having a discussion
Right.
about.
And we didn't finish.
We didn't finish because I think I was talking too slow. But anyway, we were talking about what do people with serious illness want. So this episode, we're going to finish that discussion.
I think I have an
And-
answer for that. The
What's
proper
that?
chocolates in a box of Whitman samplers.
Well, you know what? I don't think you can go wrong with chocolate in any shape or form. But that's just me. Mm-hmm. So the last episode, we talked about what do people with serious illness want. And the first thing we talked about in, pretty good depth is that people want to live without pain.
Right.
The second one is that they want to be able to make decisions about their care. So the third one is that, we haven't talked about yet is people want to know what to expect.
Yes.
And, you go to a restaurant and you walk up to the maitre d' and they say it's a 30-minute wait. Well, you know what to expect. It'll be 30 minutes. You can sit at the bar and have a drink and wait if you want. Or if you say, I'm starving to death right now, I'm not waiting 30 minutes. You can leave. But if you get the information, at least the data for what do I want to do.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not just limited to one category. I mean, I would imagine, sometimes people want to know, I don't know when the end will come. Sometimes people, when I've had to deal with people, they wanted to know actually what comes afterwards. What comes after you die? Other times, more practical things. What will after I die? What will happen to my husband or to my spouse or to my kitty cat? That.
Well, and those are real good questions, and I think those questions in terms of what to expect may change over time. Initially, when diagnosed with a life-threatening illness, people generally want to know what's going to be the course of this disease. Like, what happens next? At some point, is my right baby toe going to fall off? Or what happens with this? And so there's a lot of variables. People are different. Their genetics are different. What other diseases they have other than whatever the serious diagnosis is, all of that is going to make an impact on what can you expect in the course of this illness.
Right.
Sometimes we don't even have a clue. And I've had patients get really frustrated with, the doctor can't tell me what's going to happen. Well, there's about 50 different things that could happen, and of those, we don't know which one it is that's going to happen. And so depending on how far along in your disease process you are, will depend on just, how much data we have. But if you've just walked in and you've just gotten this serious, diagnosis, well, we might need to do more tests. We might have to do surgery. Lots of different things can occur that'll give us some more information. People with serious illness also want to know, how are they going to die? What's the end like with this disease?
Yes.
And I can remember when my sister was diagnosed with liver cancer really very late in the disease. And this is somebody who never drank and never, where did the liver cancer come from? But it was very late, very progressed. And she never asked, but her husband asked, what is death like with this disease? And I said to him, well, with that disease, typically about 4 to 6 weeks after you really start seeing symptoms related to the liver cancer, things like jaundice, what often happens is that people will go to bed one night and they just won't wake up the next morning.
That's the way to go. Yeah.
And he said, well, she was sick from, all along the way. It wasn't like they were perfectly healthy and then went to sleep. But, it's not a major dramatic death. And I don't know, maybe it was 6 or 7 weeks after, she started having some jaundice, turning yellow. He called one morning and he said it happened exactly like you said it would. She had gone to sleep and he'd gone in the morning and she was dead in her bed. And so sometimes with some illnesses, we can say, here's how it usually goes. Now, usually goes is not every time it's going to go this way. But there are other illnesses, though, that it'll be like, well, there could be 10 things that happen. So sometimes we're able to give some information in terms of how is it going to be, and sometimes not so much. But people want to be able to be prepared. They want to feel like they're in control of this totally uncontrollable situation. It's like what's going on with the coronavirus. People want to feel in control, and the way that they felt in control was to go buy up all the toilet paper. Now, it seems like sort of a silly way to feel in control, but, if I have those 40 rolls of toilet paper, man, I can eat anything I want and go to Taco Bell all I want, and I'm going to be ready, right? Well, no, the toilet paper has nothing to do with the coronavirus. And while, there might be some tummy kind of issues, that's not the main issue with this virus. But if that helps you feel like you're in control, then, okay. But, think about everybody else who also needs to wipe their bottom. So how do we give that to people? We make sure that there's good communication, how many times do I say it's good communication? It's talking.
Yes.
If you keep it in, if you hold it in, you're not going to get the information or what it is that you want. Please don't be afraid to talk to your healthcare practitioners about what it is you need. If you went to Sears or wherever and bought yourself a vacuum cleaner and you got it home and it didn't vacuum up the floor, would you say, oh, well, I don't want to bother those people at Sears. They're just so nice. I'm going to put this vacuum cleaner back in the closet and maybe sometime it'll start to suck. Well, no, we wouldn't do that. We would take that vacuum cleaner right back to the store and say, this doesn't work. I need something that's going to work. So if we can advocate for ourselves over a vacuum cleaner, we can advocate for ourselves over our health. We can say to the people, I need to have this, or I need help with this, or I need a case manager, or I need home health. There are things that we need to get through a serious illness.
Right.
There are things you're willing to do and the things that you're not willing to do. When I was really sick and in the ICU for so long, when they, finally let me sit up, I couldn't walk. I'd been laying in that bed for long.
Right.
I couldn't walk. And then when they did have me stand up, I was attached to a respirator. I was attached to IVs and feeding tubes and all that stuff. It's like I needed an entire entourage in order to move down the hallway. And I had 2 young kids at home, and I said, I am not going to rehab. Here's what I need. I need to be able to do this. Of course, I didn't say it. I had to write it because I had a trach, but I'm not going to rehab. I've been gone long enough. And, and so if I didn't communicate, here's what I want, here's what I need, here's why I need it, how could I possibly get it? So we have to talk for ourselves. The next thing that people with serious want is they want to find meaning to their life and their living and their dying. So when you're facing the end of your life, you're looking and you're saying, what was it all about? Why was I here? Or like for me, when I did recover, well, why did I recover? What am I supposed to do now that I didn't die from that illness? So there's this sort of crisis, if you will, where you're saying, I'm not sure either why I was here or what I'm supposed to do now. And so patients with serious illness want to be kept well enough informed so that they can attend to their relationships. So at the end of life, there's really 5 things that need to be said. We need to say thank you to people. We need to say, please forgive me. And we can say, oh, I don't have anything that I have to have anybody forgive me for. Well, there's always something, because we can be real jerks without even knowing it.
Yeah, that's true.
Saying, please forgive me. Saying, I forgive you. People can feel guilty about things that you say, what? I don't even remember that. But say, you know what? I really don't remember that, but it must be important to you because you're talking to me about it, and I forgive you for that. Say, I love you. There are people that you can go through your whole life and they never say, I love you. But at the end of life is the time to say, if you haven't said it before, it's a good time, because you might not get another chance.
Right.
And then the last thing is to say goodbye. Because this death, at least as far as we know, and in this world, is final. If we don't do this stuff while the person is alive, while we have the opportunity to do it, as far as we know, we're not going to get another opportunity to do it again. And so this is a very poignant and important part of that end of life period. We have to have that opportunity to do the things that are important to us, to practice your faith if that's what you want. I had a patient when I was working in hospice who was Catholic, and she was nearing the end of her life, and I said to her, do you want me to call the priest? Do you want to have last rites? Or I guess now they've changed that to the sacrament of the sick. I guess that's less threatening than last rites, but anyway, it has a new name. And she said, well, I haven't gone to church in like 20 years, and I don't really believe in any of that. But she said, in case I'm wrong, call the priest. So we called the parish priest, and the priest came and heard her confession and gave her that sacrament. And I was always, kind of amused that it's like, well, she's right. Who the heck knows? Might as well take every precaution possible in case that's the case, in case that's what's needed at that point. So people have to have the opportunity to make a decision to say yes or no. It's what I want. It's what I don't want. And to do things that are important. People, especially younger people, will think, in my experience, will think that they have forever. And death is something that comes to old people, and that's the job of old people, but they don't think it's ever going to be them.
Right.
And so I had this guy once, again, when I worked in hospice, I was living in New Hampshire, and he was like, I have like so much stuff to do. I do not have time to die. And he was just frantic and anxious about the things he needed to do. And I said, well, tell me, what do you need to do? And he said, look out that window. You see all those cars out there? And let me tell you, there were quite a few cars. I said, yes. He said, well, I was going to sell all of those. My wife needs that money. I said, yeah, I can see that. I said, so tell me, because you're not well enough to really do that work, who could do that for you? And he thought for a minute, and he said, well, I think my brother would do it for me. I said, okay, have you asked him? He said, no. I said, okay, well, how do we find your brother? He says, oh, he's out in the living room watching TV. I said, do you want me to have him come in and you can tell him what it is you want him to do? I said, because I think he would probably love to have something to do. And he said, yeah, have him come in. So I went and got the brother. I said, hey, here's what's going on. He really wants to talk to you about something he needs you to do. And he's like, yeah, what kind, And so the brother was thrilled to have something to be able to do. This guy was felt a little bit more sense of control because something that was important to him and the money that would be important to his wife was going to happen. So that's, again, another example of the jobs or the work that we need to do when we're facing the end of our life.
I think too. Also, so that's the patient, but I think the two-way street. I mean, where people have to go. The survivors have something to say. Might have something to say, but are unable to say it. But just to keep that open, it's a two-way street. It can't just be the person who's actually dying, but the people who will be left behind. I mean, they often have something to say.
That's absolutely right, and it's part of the work that we do as healthcare practitioners is to educate the family in terms of what's going on right now. And so, if you're not dealing with a palliative care person or a hospice person, you might not hear this. And so I'm going to tell you this so that you can then apply it. Mm-hmm. And it makes me think of a guy who I was taking care of on a palliative care unit, and he had disappeared from his family for like 5 years. Didn't call anybody, wasn't in touch with anybody, and the family was pissed. It was like, we didn't know if you were dead or alive, and now here you are. And the brother, I was talking with the brother, and I said, well, as you talk with him, I said, here are the things that are important at the end of life. Because the brother who had just, returned to life and we got a hold of the family.
Right.
He was not talking a lot anymore. I said, but he can't talk to you, but you can talk to him. We assume that hearing is the last sense to go. So we assume that mm-hmm. hearing is what we say to people, they'll hear. So you need to tell him thank you and forgive me, and I forgive you, and I love you, and goodbye. I said, those are the 5 things. And I said, just tell everybody else you need a few minutes with him, you want to be alone with him. And so he said, okay, well, let me write this down. So he wrote down the 5 things. I left and went back to my office, and he comes down the hallway looking for me. He said, I sat with him. I told him those things. I told him how mad I was that he had left and that we didn't know where he was. But I told him that I forgave him, and he went through the list, and he said, you know what? He said, there was a tear coming down his cheek. And I said, I think he heard you. And he said, I can't tell you how grateful I am that you told me that. He said, I never would have known to do it, and he would have gone to his grave with me being really mad at him. But now that's not the case. And that is so important, because while the person is still alive, you can say what you need to say. But once they're dead, you can't get that kind of closure.
It's true, yeah.
So the next thing is that people want to be seen as a whole person. They don't want to be seen as a disease or a diagnosis. So if you have cancer, for example, you have your oncologist. But you might still have heart disease. You might still have diabetes. And so if you happen to be in the hospital, you have your oncologist coming in, and they're just only looking at the cancer, and they're saying, oh, we've, it's maybe moved to another place, but, we're going to keep doing this. And then the cardiologist comes in and says, oh, your blood pressure looks great, and your heart rate's you look great. Well, that doctor told me I look great. I must not be really as sick as I thought I was. And then the next doctor comes in. Oh, well, because they're looking at you by each part of your body and not by as a whole person.
Okay.
And so people who have serious illness, they don't want to be seen as a disease or a diagnosis. They want us to look at them as a whole person and take care of the whole system, to take care and care about them. It's not just, the guy with cancer in room 412. It's Mr. Jones who's in 412, and he's got cancer, and he's got 3 little kids, and he's unemployed, and he's got 38 cars in the back of his house, you know? It's more than just the diagnosis. And if people start to treat you like you're a diagnosis, you say, hey, look at me, I'm here. And I got a lot more going on than just this cancer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the next thing that people want, and I guess actually it's the last one from this study, was that I need help with my loved ones. So they've had a certain responsibility or relationship within the family, and now they're going to be going. And they need some peace in knowing that someone's going to take care of their family, that there is some financial care and there is emotional care. And people will even say, I can't let go until I know they're going to be okay, that they'll make it without me. And I had, when I was working in hospice, I had a patient who was a veteran and had applied for his veterans benefits. And I think he had been approved for it, and they were going to start the check on such and such a day. But he had to be alive on whatever day that was for that first check in order for then there to be survivor's benefits for his wife.
Okay.
So this guy, by health standards, was really in poor shape, and we were all kind of really surprised he was lasting so long. You never see somebody who's like really, really sick, and it's like, what's keeping him here? Until somebody said he has to get that first check in order for his wife to be able to get those benefits. And so, doggone it if he didn't hold out to get that first check so that his wife would get what she needed. So it's really pretty phenomenal how people can, I've seen that working like over holidays, like from Thanksgiving, ask anybody who works in hospice, from right before Thanksgiving till after the first of the year, the death rate slows down because nobody wants to ruin the holidays for their family. If there's any possible way that they can hold on and just kind of coast, it's amazing, but people will. I can't even tell you how that happens, but I've seen it happen over and over.
Yeah.
You know, they don't want to ruin the holidays for their families. So they want, and that's another piece of this too, is that sometimes you'll hear people say, tell them it's okay for them to die. It's okay. Just give them permission to die. And I can remember a friend of mine telling me that her girlfriend had said that to her elderly dad. She'd said, Dad, it's okay, you can die. And the guy hadn't talked in like a couple of days. And he opened one eye and he looked at her and said, who the hell asked you? And he lived for like another 2 weeks because he was so pissed that somebody was telling him, you can die. The real thing that people want to hear is, I'm going to be okay. Not you can go, but rather, I'm going to be okay. And when you're ready to go, I'm going to be okay.
But I think it just also depends on the situation too, because when my mother died, I was here. I was in New York. I had to go back to Michigan, and I couldn't go. I mean, at that moment, her health had been deteriorating, and suddenly it was a downward spiral, and just it just went faster and faster. So I asked my sister to put the phone to her ear, and by this time, my mother could barely speak, and my sister didn't understand why. I wanted that. She said, well, what do you want to tell her? I'll tell her. I go, no. She needs to hear it from me. So she did, and I told my mother, listen, I will be there tomorrow, or it may be the following morning. But please wait for me. And my mother, who really could not talk, made a sound. Which then my sister, when my sister got back on the phone, she said, what did you say? So I explained to her, He says, well, you need to get here as soon as possible. I said, I will be, but I just asked her to wait. So later that day, I called again, sang a little old song that she always liked. And I said, listen, remember, you're going to wait for me. If not tomorrow, I promise the following morning. So I got there, and we had our time together, and talked to her in her ear, sang her a couple more songs. We were all sitting around with her, holding her hand. I was the last one to leave the room, and I thanked her for waiting for me. And then I told her, go to sleep. My grandmother died when my mother was about 5 years old, and my mother never got over that. So I told my mother, go to sleep, go see your mother, tell her I said hello, but go to sleep. It's okay. Thank you for waiting for me. We got a call, I don't know, about 4 a.m. that she had passed away. Mm-hmm. So I think I agree with you what you said with the story with where the guy opened his eye and it's just died for 2 weeks later. But I do think there are times sometimes when it's in that situation. It was just she just wanted to wait, and then the time came, and it's okay. It's time to move on.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
But do you think it's different to say go to sleep as opposed to it's okay to die now?
If it had been someone else, and there have been other circumstances with people, I have said it's okay to die now. Mm-hmm. With her, because we understood that, and there were times when she would talk about dying, where she would just say, "Well, I just want to go to sleep and not wake up.
I see.
I want to go to sleep." And eventually, it was no longer "I want to go to sleep and not wake up." It was just simply, "I want to go to sleep." Mm-hmm. And again, it was just in the way she said it. It's like she didn't have to say anymore and not wake up. So that's why I used that for that situation, because we had a very clear understanding of what that meant. That's not going to fly for everyone.
No,
and you're right.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And like you said, with some people, absolutely, it's like, okay, you can die now. Mm-hmm. It's okay to die now.
That's a great gift you gave your mom, though.
Thank you.
What was the favorite song she'd like to hear?
Wow, it's in Spanish. She grew up in Mexico. In Spanish, okay. Estas son las mañanitas que cantó el Rey Jesús. What is the title of the song? I'm sorry, I don't remember the title of the song.
Do you want to sing it for me?
No, not at all. No, I'm in a podcast. No, I'm not going to sing this. No, and actually, when I sang it, I had the sheet music.
I was going to say, did you have a microphone and a silver suit on?
No, not at all. I wouldn't do that. Right. So, not the sheet music. I had the lyrics written down. So I could just let's sing it.
Still, that's very sweet.
Yeah.
I'm going to think about what I want you to sing to me on my deathbed.
Something by the Beatles?
I don't know. I got to think about it.
All right.
So, in closing, palliative care really improves the quality of care for people who are at their sickest. And it gives an opportunity to prepare for death, to anticipate what they need to do, to talk to the people they need to talk to. And these are all skills that as you listen to this podcast, hopefully you'll learn some of them so that you can apply them in your own life and in the lives of your family.
Yes.
So, welcome to our third half. And in this third half, we are going to be talking with Rochele Converse. And she is a woman that I met probably about, 11, 12 years ago when she was first diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And we're going to be talking with her about what people with serious illness would want. It's been our topic for the last 2 podcasts. And over time, Rochele has had a second diagnosis of breast cancer. And she absolutely agrees that cancer is a serious illness and that there's lots of things that can happen to us throughout our lives, but cancer is a pretty serious thing. So welcome, Rochele.
Thank you.
So do you want to just do a brief kind of overview of the last 11 years and
well, let's see.
Focusing on the disease part, not all the other gory details?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm just strolling around in my career at 50 years old and going strong. And as I look back on it now, it's probably like an incubator for cancer. I was getting up early. I was going to bed late. I don't remember seeing the sun come up or the sun set, but that kind of stressful job. And just went for my regular appointment, my regular checkup. And saw my gynecologist, who I have been seeing since I was 21 years old. So there's something to be said about seeing, a professional, a doctor, a gynecologist, not just a GP. Although there's nothing wrong with a GP, and then him going in and saying, "Hey, I see something that I'd like to research further." So I ended up having an ultrasound. And they found a spot on my ovary. And then the doctor said, I think we're going to wait and see if it grows. So we waited about 4 more months. And it took me a long time to get in. I distinctly remember telling my husband, you could die trying to get back in to the doctor's office for an appointment. Little did I know that I did get back in. He said, you know what? They wouldn't give me the results. They called you in. I was like, oh, that's not good. When they call you and they won't tell you something with the phone. So I get in there and he says, it's grown and I'd like to go in and take that ovary out. And I said, you don't want to take it all out? No, we'll just take that one. And here I was the person that wanted to do everything natural. Let's just go through, menopause, natural, whatever. And so we go in for surgery and my husband likes to say he just sat down to the very best breakfast. He was just going to eat this breakfast and he gets called back. Yeah, I said, it's not about you, honey. He gets called back to the OR room and they tell him that they've found cancer. Well, when they wake me up in in recovery room and tell me that you have cancer. And I said, I'm under anesthesia still. I can't fathom this. I'm like, you didn't take anything out? No. So they hand me my file. They actually tell me I have an appointment to see a specialist, which was Dr. Mantle. And that's how I got discharged that day. So, that night I'm online. By the time I come out of anesthesia, I'm online. And by the next day, Friday morning, I have 4 appointments pending in different places, one with Dr. Mantle. Of course, I don't know what to do. I've got one at MD Anderson. I've got one at Johns Hopkins, and I've got one at the Mayo Clinic. I've got 4 things ready to go because that's what we do. We over-prepare. Yeah. So I go to my appointment with Dr. Mantle, and I feel completely comfortable in my conversation with him. And anyway, so we do surgery. I have a lot of, they found it at stage 1. I have a lot of complications from the surgery. This is not about the part, but those can be a lot. Yeah. Sometimes, it's not the cancer that's it's those complications. So long and short of it, that was 12 years ago. I went to my first infusion and met a lovely, lovely woman, Linda Spears, and God bless her. I'm high on a kite from all these drugs they're pumping in to me. If I take an aspirin, that's been the extent of my life. They're giving us, Benadryl and all this kind of stuff, and I'm as loopy as I can be. And she says, you should come to this Open Oklahoma meeting. And I said, what? And so I take down the information, and I'm thinking, there's no way. I am so high, I could not. That was on Wednesday. On Saturday, I could go to anything. So I see her next time, and 3 weeks later, I see her again, and she starts talking about this. And then she tells me she's coming every week. And at any rate, I attribute this beautiful group of ladies that I met in Hopeland, Oklahoma, Linda Spears for inviting me, and for my survival, because they listened. I learned from them. I learned from a cohort group of people. So I've never thought it was going to be a cohort of cancer people, but that's how I've always approached something, a job, school, whatever. And I just fell in love with them. I have not had any problems with ovarian cancer or like a reoccurrence or anything like that. But I felt like it was my mission to be there and help other people, because they were there when I needed them. When I was riding that roller coaster of emotions, they were there for me. So I've been coming ever since. And I like to bring some healthy food like yogurt and stuff like that for the group. So
nobody likes you because you bring yogurt.
They love that They love that stuff. So, yeah. And a little flower pot you can make, put your succulent plants in. So, yeah, they love that good stuff. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's...
I'm teasing you.
that group, I don't know what I would have done without that group. I really don't. I don't even like it's the first time I really even thought about that. So I really think that's a God thing. And I tell people I also, I was afraid to tell my friends and my family. I was afraid to tell them the thoughts that were in my head about what about cancer? What about, what if you die from it? What if there's, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I had read about a group called Stephen's Ministry in my church. And I called a lady and set up an appointment. And I said, hey, here's what's happening with me. And I really need someone that I can talk to that's objective, that's out here, that I can say, what if, and then they can, help me be centered again. And that was really the two of those things were very beneficial to me. So they helped me focus on getting healthy and taking care of myself and making myself a priority, because in my way of life, I was always taking care of everybody else. And it was difficult to turn that around. So I don't even know if that was your question.
Well, so you went from, and that's where Rochele and I met, is that I was a facilitator at Hope, which is a support group for women with gynecological cancers. And so you went from that, and you did really well with your surgery and with your treatment. And then, was it last year that you were diagnosed with breast cancer?
Last year. So I had been retired about 4 years, and my husband and he has a consulting business. So, I help him a little bit, and I got over involved in some things. And so I love the Master Gardeners, and I do things with other little groups and stuff. So, and I like to mentor young single moms and some people who are going to school. So I mentor and work with them. And then helping with my family. And so I have some family members that have some serious health issues. So moving along, and then I found a lump in my breast. And I distinctly remember, this is about May, and I thought, this doesn't feel right. I've had cysts and stuff like that before. And I thought, well, this doesn't feel like a cyst. So I called the doctor's office and said, hey, do I have an appointment for a mammogram in August? This is May, August. Yes. I'm like, okay, thank you. And then I wait until August. Can you believe that? Because in my head, I was just like, it's not anything. I talked to myself out. If I had mentioned that to one other person, I know if I'd even said it in my help group, they would have said, what's wrong with you, Rochele? Go get that checked out now. But I was like, I got an appointment, so I'll go get it checked out. Well, the Dr. Jett was really good. Okay, let me back up. They do the mammogram. And the lady goes, okay, well, the doctor will call you. And she's got her head down. I'm like, I can tell. I'm like, something's up because you're not making eye contact with me. You're telling me the doctor's going to call me. And that doesn't happen. I've had lots of mammograms in the last 20 years. And so I'm waiting for it. In the meantime, I have a family member that's got a lot of health problems. And so they call me in, they do a biopsy. And she says, I said, well, so what do you think? Do you think it's something? And she said, yeah, I do. And I said, okay. So they said, well, do you want they said, well, do you like the results? You want to come in and talk about the results? You want us to call? I said, just call me. Now I'm so cavalier about it. Yeah, just call me and tell me if I have cancer. So they call me. They call me the day I'm taking my family member to the doctor. They call me the day that my mother-in-law passed away that morning.
Oh,
they call me that day, and I'm in my car. Maybe I should have set a little bit different parameter. And I'm thinking, the lady is nurse navigator's trying to tell me, and she says, and we have these test results or whatever. And I said, listen, I'm right around the corner. Can I just come get the paperwork? I'm thinking I can read this for myself. Well, yes. And I said, okay, I come over there. I double park. I run inside. I'm like, just give me the paper. Give me the paper. Give me the paper. I'll read it. I can read what it says. Well, don't you want to make a meeting? I said, maybe later. I've got, my mother-in-law just passed away. We're trying to make arrangements to go out of town and for the funeral. And so that's how I found out about breast cancer. And then, of course, we go out of town for the funeral. They're calling me going, you need to come in the next day. I'm like, I can't. It's Labor Day. I'm at a funeral. I'm out of state and whatever. But to say that on the side of the medical side, they were so, get in now. Let's do something now. And I'm like, okay, time out. It's more days in a week. It's not going to matter. This is life and death right now. There's other more important things. So I wouldn't even let my husband tell his family because I didn't want to take away from anything. And I wouldn't even tell my husband until the next day because I didn't want to tell him the day that my mother-in-law passed. I said, a man can only take so much. I can't tell him everything in one day. I told the doctor that, and he came out and almost hugged my husband. He was like, sir, I'm so sorry, But anyway, say that I don't know if there's a way to take news. Maybe I need to listen to that podcast about how to take bad news. But I think I took it pretty calmly. And my idea was, okay, what do we do next? I remember the nurse navigator saying, well, maybe you should come to this, and this will empower you. And something about that word empower kind of triggered me. And I was like, empower. Have I used that word with other people? And did they take it just like I'm taking it right now? Because it just seems so just not a good word right now. It's not about being empowered.
How did you take it? How did you hear that word?
Like, I don't even have the word to describe it. It just didn't sit well with me. I was like, empowered? This isn't about empowered. I'm already an empowered woman. I need information about my breast cancer. I just need the information. I'm always like, give me the facts, give me the plan, what's the treatment, whatever. You start telling me there's no plan, there's no treatment, then I know there's a different plan. Maybe we're doing. Mm-hmm. But I just listened to it. I didn't say anything to her, and I appreciated it. And of course, I'm thinking, the whole time she's talking, I'm thinking, this woman has to tell people all day, every day about their breast cancer. What kind of a job is that? That has got to be so hard. So, I'm always kind of thinking about that other part. But for the longest time, Marianne, I wouldn't tell anybody until I knew exactly what they were going to do. I just, you can't control anything. You can't control what's happening to you. What you can control is how you are reacting to it, how you share information about it, and how how you're going to participate in the treatment or what kind of treatment's going to take place. So I think that is with a lot of people about the treatment plan and about their next steps. I just think that everybody, of course, reacts differently. I've listened to so many people's reactions and their stories, and it always hits me the same way. What a god-awful way to live to hear about having cancer, and to hear in this particular state that 1 in 3, one thing says 1 in 3 and one says 1 in 2 people in the state of Oklahoma will have cancer. I'm thinking, this is awful. This is worse than COVID. You're talking about 30.3% or 50% of people. And that's worse than a virus. So anyway, so there's breast cancer, had the lumpectomy, had the, that was after I took a trip. I had this tree trip. Yeah, I just waited. The doctor said I could, so he's like, it's a slow growing one. Yeah, do what you want to do. So I took that trip. I actually had 2 trips planned. I took that trip, went to the Rockies, did whatever, and in the Canadian Rockies, enjoyed that with 2 other cancer survivors that Audra and Amy, and we had a grand time. It was beautiful.
I bet.
Cleansed the palate of my mind so I could go in and go do the rest of it. It was really nice. It was for both my husband and I as well, because of his mother passing and stuff. So it was kind of nice to get away for a little bit, and then came back, did the surgery, and the genetics came back, and it was not a type of cancer that would respond to chemo. So it was like, I'm like, we're going to do whatever. I don't really want to do chemo again, but let's just do whatever we have to do. And then did radiation. So all that radiation ended in November. And then here I am. What month is this? June? Today's June.
Today's June.
Today's June.
We're both trying to remember, but it is June.
June. So staying home and being and resting up, it's been good for me. It's been some projects I wanted to work on, and my husband's got so many projects working. It's good. It's really nice, but there's a lot of them. And then I'm just gardening around here and just staying isolated. So I still wear a mask out. I don't care who wears one. I'm wearing one. Do your own thing.
So you've touched on, or really talked about the role that your support group played in the ovarian cancer diagnosis. And I know those ladies helped you, during the breast cancer diagnosis.
Yes.
So that's something that somebody who has a serious illness, to find a support group. You mentioned when we were chatting before we started the interview that you also on Facebook belong to a couple of different sort of focused groups relating to ovarian cancer.
Yes.
So that's that support aspect of it. Are there any other aspects that you would say when you got that serious diagnosis that you would say helped you, or things that you wanted and either you were able to find to help you or you were not able to find to help you, that you said, I need this?
Yes. I'm the type of person that likes the information. So when I have my biopsy information, I can look at it. Then I can compare it and look at other things. But I love that when I went in there, that poor nurse navigator that gave me a little bag and a big old thick book and whatever. Hey, I from cover to cover. I read everything. I probably read it that night. I was reading it in the car, trying to go back home. I'm reading everything that I can put my hands on to better understand. And people are so much more informed. I don't know that 12 years ago, everybody knew exactly everything about their diagnosis was it this type of, all the DNA of everything. That has progressed so much. But what was beneficial was having that report, having each and every single doctor I saw, there were 4 of them, go over that report with me. And then when I come back in to talk with me about it, now I can talk with other people about that information. They can share theirs. And that's what's happening on Facebook and some of these other groups. People come in and absolutely have already internalized. This is what was in my biopsy. This is what, this is the type that I have. This is the treatment that I have. And I love that part, that they can share, well, I'm doing this and I'm doing this, not to try to self-diagnose or whatever, but to say, hey, this helped me. And some of these were alternative kind of medicine kind of things. There was a lot of conversation about medical marijuana that kind of came up. And I told you there's a physician in one of our groups that said, yeah, I know people that are taking it. I know people that have, and I have a prescription for it. Well, several other people said, yes, I have a prescription for it too. And so, but then they talked about other things. So, well, I'm trying some herbal things or whatever that my doctor said I could do, but they're being honest about what they're doing with their physician. So that conversation, being able to talk to someone, is critical. When I look online at some of these ladies, and one of these groups, breast cancer people, are all over the world because they've said where they are. So they're in the United Kingdom, Scotland, they're in Australia, they're in New Zealand, they're all over the United States, they're in Canada. They've said, well, we don't have access to that. We are rural, or we're, in a secluded area, and we don't have access to this. There was somebody, I wanted to say in Greenland or Iceland, I can't remember which one, that was talking about how they had free medical care wherever it was, but they did not have access to some things trials. They did not have access to some trial things. And ladies on there were like, you can come and stay with me. I am
Oh my gosh.
Hospital that has all these trials. You can stay with me. I will take care of you. I've already talked to my family. We will support you. And I'm thinking, an outpouring. I mean, can you believe it? I mean, like,
unbelievable.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. That's unbelievable that people would do it. But it's like sisters who walk that walk. No, you don't need people to disagree, not disagree, but be disagreeable and unreliable, or what's the word? Not responsive to your needs. And you don't need to hear the word no right now. You need to hear, here's what we can do. So it's very encouraging to look at that and to see that body of people who are in treatment share. Now, there are, at the same time, I've had to just snooze a couple people because it was the same thing over and over and over. And I'm like, okay, you're in that faulty circuit going round and round and round. And no matter what anybody said, you're not ready to hear that yet. So whether it was, treatment or whatever else, you're going to have to process this. So yeah, it's so different. Marianne, it's so different from everybody else. Everybody's experience is different, but there are a lot of commonalities. Mm-hmm. So I encourage people. I've even had some people private message me. I've even sent a Hope care packet from Tenaciously Teal to somebody who lived in Louisiana, and they've since passed, but and say, you know what, all that stuff that you've gone through, there are lots of people that have done it, and you can too, if you want to. But I've also seen people who said, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm tired. And I've seen an outpouring of people said, you know what, if you've had enough, then you have the right to refuse other treatment or to do whatever. You have the right to go home. You have the right to go to hospice. You have the right to do whatever you need to do, and just be honest with yourself. You're told to go home and put your affairs in order. You have the right to go home, put your affairs in order, or you have the right to go home and fight like the Dickens if you want to. So maybe that's empowering people. I don't know.
Maybe. But there is, I've seen there comes a time for a lot of people after the third or fourth drug, or sometimes after the second drug, that they say, living this way is not living. Mm-hmm. And it's, I'm sick all the time, or I'm tired all the time. I can't do anything anyway. And it's just like, I don't want to do it anymore. Yeah. And you can understand that you get to a point where you say, I don't really want to do that anymore.
I know. I saw,
And that's hard, but you can appreciate it.
yeah, I distinctly remember a time laying in bed with ovarian cancer after treatment, and I was laying down like this, tired as I've ever been. And I remember laying on these sheets and thinking, oh, this is what old people meant when they said, I'm so tired, I could die. I'm so tired, I could die. And I thought, you know what? You need to get up out of these sheets, Rochele. Start putting one foot in front of the other, because I'd actually seen other people who'd had cancer. Actually, I can think of this gentleman was a principal, and he has since passed, but he lived many, many years after that diagnosis and after that treatment. I mean, like 10. And I remember him getting up. He was as white as a sheet one day. He was at work, and I thought, what are you doing here? And he said, I'm putting one foot in front of the other, and I am going to live. And I don't think he meant I'm going to live and survive. I am going to live today. And so one in front of the other, and I'm just going to say, well, you know what? And I remember mentally saying to myself, if Frank can do this, I can do this. And that's what I did, you know?
Yeah. And you're vibrant and beautiful and active, and you give so much to people. You just really are an inspiring woman.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you for doing this interview with me, and I know that you'll inspire our listeners too.
Also, our humor segment, Will Rogers once saying, everything is funny as long as it happens to somebody else. The idea that tragedy plus timing equals comedy. God knows we need your jokes, because you're probably sick of Charlie's and mine. But I do have one.
Oh?
Yeah. So there was a patient in hospice, one of my guys actually, and he was so sick near the end of his life. And he was laying in his little hospital bed there, and all of a sudden he smells something, and he sniffs again, and it's his wife's chocolate chip cookies. It's like, man, those smell so good. So he pulls himself out of bed, puts his feet on the ground, and he just holding onto the wall, walks down the hall from his bedroom into the kitchen, pulls himself in, leans on the counter, and reaches for a chocolate chip cookie that, there's just this whole mess of them laying on the counter, cooling off. And he goes and he reaches for that cookie, and his wife slaps his hand and says, leave those alone. They're for the funeral. Got any other jokes?
Yes, I do. How can you tell if your wife is dead?
I don't know, Charlie. How can you tell if your wife is dead?
The sex is the same, but the dishes pile up.
Oh.
How can you tell if your husband's dead?
I know, Charlie. How can you
sex
tell if your
right,
husband's dead?
this is going to break the timing, which at this point is not going to make any difference anyways. So, how can you tell if your husband is dead? The sex is the same, but you get to use the remote. What do you call 5,000 dead lawyers at the bottom of the ocean? A good start.
I was going to say Match.com.
Oh. So yours is better. So.
Is it?
Yes.
I made it
think
up.
so.
Okay.
Write it down. So, doctor and a patient. Doctor, I have some bad news and some very bad news. The patient, well, might as well give me the bad news first. The lab called with your test results. They said you have 24 hours to live. 24 hours? That's terrible. What could be worse? What's the very bad news? I've been trying to reach you since yesterday.
I like that one. So, on that note, we are hoping that you're going to send us some of your jokes so you can not have to listen to ours anymore. If you were able to ask Death anything you wanted, what would you ask? Send that along to us. And also, send us a picture and a description for our segment on I wouldn't be caught dead wearing that. Something that you'd say, I wouldn't be caught dead wearing that, but you wore it anyway, and why did you do it? So we need all of that. I think that's it. Mm-hmm. We need that email to us if you would please help us out, and we're very interested to hear what you have to say. Oh, plus, if you have any questions for us, if there's topics you want to hear about, or you've heard Charlie and I talk about our families and our illnesses or whatever, if there's something that happened to you that you'd like us to share and talk about, please send those in to us. How do you do that? You send it to info. Email is info@everyonedies.org. It's info at every, EVERY, the number one, dies, DIES, that's all one section, .org, O-R-G.
If you prefer traditional mail, P.O. Box 851891, Yukon, Oklahoma, 73085.
Or on Facebook, Everyone Dies, EVERY, the number one, dies, DIES, all one word.
If you'd like to visit our website, everyonedies.org, and again, EVERY, the number one, DIES.org.
Or Twitter @EveryoneDies. Again, the one is the number one.
Thank you for listening. Please stay tuned for future episodes of Everyone Dies. Our thanks to our CEO, retired Major General David, our producer Sandy, John, our technical advisor, and our friends and family who are helping make this podcast a reality. This is Charlie Navarrete.
And I'm Marianne Matzow.
And we look forward to talking with you soon.
Goodbye.
Bye.
This podcast does not provide medical advice. All discussion on this podcast, such as treatments, dosages, outcomes, charts, patient profiles, advice, messages, and any other discussion are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Always seek the advice of your primary care practitioner or other qualified health providers with any questions that you may have regarding your health. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard from this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Everyone Dies does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, practitioners, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned in this podcast. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast by persons appearing on this podcast at the invitation of Everyone Dies or by other members is solely at your own risk.